The year was 2187, and humanity had finally reached the stars. For 30 years, human ships had explored the space near their solar system. They had met other alien races, made trade deals, and built a small but proud fleet called the Earth Defense Fleet. Humans were not the strongest race in the galaxy. They were not the richest, and they did not have the biggest ships. But humans had one thing that made other races nervous. They never gave up, and they never forgot when someone hurt them. Far away from Earth, in a system full of red stars, there lived a proud and powerful empire called the Scarn Dominion. The Scarn were tall, gray-skinned beings with sharp eyes and cold hearts. They had ruled over more than 40 star systems for over 1,000 years. Every race that met the Scarn either bowed to them or was destroyed. The Scarn believed that weak races did not deserve to live free. They believed that only the strong should rule the stars. The leader of the Scarn Dominion was a warlord named Krith Voss. He was old, but his mind was sharp, and his hunger for power had no end. When his scouts told him about a new race called humans, he laughed. His scouts said humans had weak ships, small colonies, and no real army compared to the Scarn fleet. Krith Voss saw an easy target. He saw a new planet to add to his empire, and slaves to work in his mines. Krith Voss sent a message to the human government, based on Earth. The message was short and full of pride. It said that humanity must give up their weapons, become servants of the Scarn Dominion, and pay tribute every year, or Earth would be destroyed. The human leaders were shocked. They had never dealt with a threat like this before. Many world leaders wanted to talk, to find a peaceful way out. They sent a human diplomat named Sarah Chen to speak with the Scarn. Sarah Chen traveled with a small group to the Scarn homeworld. She tried to explain that humans wanted peace, not war. She offered trade deals, cultural exchange, and friendship between the two races. But Krith Voss only laughed at her. He told her that humans were too weak to be equals. He told her that humans should be thankful the Scarn were even willing to let them live as slaves instead of killing them all. Sarah Chen felt anger rise in her chest, but she stayed calm. She looked Krith Voss in the eyes and said one sentence that would echo through history. "You want war?" she said, her voice steady and cold. "Then you will have it, and you will regret asking." Krith Voss found this funny. He laughed loudly in front of his generals, mocking the small human woman standing before his throne. He told her that no race had ever dared to threaten the Scarn Dominion, and humans would be no different from the others who had fallen before them. He ordered his guards to send Sarah Chen back to Earth with a warning. He said that in 7 days, the Scarn fleet would arrive at Earth, and if the humans did not surrender by then, their planet would burn. Sarah Chen returned home with a heavy heart. She reported everything to the World Council, the group of leaders who ran Earth's government. The council was full of fear, but also full of a strange, quiet anger. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth agreed to work together completely. Old rivalries were forgotten. Old wars between human nations were paused. There was only one goal now: survive, and then make sure this never happened again. The Earth Defense Fleet was called to full alert. Admiral Elena Cross, a woman with 20 years of military experience, was given command of all human forces. She was known for being calm under pressure and for thinking many steps ahead of her enemies. She gathered her top officers in the command center below the city of Geneva and looked at the star map showing the incoming Scarn fleet. "They think we are weak," Admiral Cross said to her officers. "They think 7 days is enough time to scare us into giving up. They are wrong. We have 7 days to prepare, and humans have always done our best work under pressure." The next 7 days were like nothing Earth had ever seen before. Factories that once made cars and airplanes were changed overnight to build weapons and ship parts. Scientists worked without sleep to improve shield technology and engine speed. Every young man and woman who could hold a weapon or fix a machine was called to help. Children helped pack supplies. Farmers grew extra food for soldiers. The whole planet moved as one body, working toward a single goal. Admiral Cross knew that Earth's fleet could not win a straight fight against the much bigger Scarn armada. The Scarn had more ships, bigger guns, and centuries of war experience. So instead of planning a normal battle, she planned something different. She studied every report about Scarn tactics that human scouts had gathered over the years. She learned that the Scarn were proud and never expected weaker races to fight back with tricks. They expected fear, not cleverness. Cross decided that humanity's best weapon was not their ships, but their minds. She ordered her engineers to build hidden mines in the asteroid belt near Earth, disguised to look like normal space rocks. She ordered small stealth ships to hide behind Earth's moon, ready to strike from behind once the Skarn fleet arrived. She also ordered several old, unused satellites to be turned into powerful weapons, hidden in plain sight, looking like harmless space junk. On the 7th day, exactly as promised, the Skarn fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system. Hundreds of massive warships came out of hyperspace, their dark gray hulls blocking out the stars behind them. Krith Voss himself led the attack from his flagship, a giant vessel called the Iron Fang. He expected to see human ships running away in fear, or perhaps a small group trying to surrender. Instead, he found nothing waiting for him but silence. The Skarn fleet moved closer to Earth, confused by the empty space around them. Krith Voss ordered his ships to advance through the asteroid belt, thinking it was the fastest path to Earth. It was a mistake he would soon regret. The hidden mines exploded one after another, tearing through the sides of several Skarn warships. Fire and metal debris filled the space where minutes before there had been silence. Alarms rang through the entire Skarn fleet, as their commanders realized they had walked into a trap. But Krith Voss was not scared. He was furious. He ordered the rest of his fleet to push forward faster, ignoring the losses. He wanted to reach Earth and begin the attack before the humans could recover from this small trick. As his ships broke through the asteroid field and entered orbit near Earth's moon, the hidden human stealth ships attacked from behind. Their weapons tore into the unprotected engines of the Skarn ships, causing chaos in the enemy formation. Down on Earth, people watched the battle from cameras placed on satellites and ships. Every screen in every city showed the fight happening above them. Families held their breath, praying for their planet's survival. Soldiers on the ground stood ready, though there was little they could do from the surface. This was a battle that would be decided in space, far above their heads. Admiral Cross watched carefully from the command center, giving orders through her communication system. She knew the Skarn fleet still greatly outnumbered the humans, even after the losses from the mines and the surprise attack. She needed one more trick to change the tide of the battle. She ordered the fake satellites, which were actually powerful weapons in disguise, to activate. These weapons fired concentrated energy blasts directly into the heart of the Skarn formation, destroying several more warships and causing even more confusion. Krith Voss screamed with rage inside his flagship, watching his once mighty fleet fall apart because of tricks from a race he thought was beneath him. He ordered a full assault on Earth itself, deciding that even if he lost many ships, he would make sure the humans paid for this humiliation. His remaining warships began firing down at the planet, aiming for major cities. This was the moment Admiral Cross had feared the most. The shields protecting Earth's cities were strong, built using the best technology humans had, combined with knowledge gained from trading with other alien races over the years. But no shield could hold forever against the full power of a Skarn assault. Cross knew she needed to end this battle quickly, before the shields failed and millions of innocent lives were lost. She gave the order for the final part of her plan. Hidden deep in the asteroid belt, disguised among the rocks, were several massive ships that Earth had been secretly building for the past 2 years, ever since first contact with hostile alien races had made human leaders realize that war might come one day. These were Earth's true battleships, kept hidden and secret, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. The hidden battleships emerged from the asteroid field, their engines glowing bright as they raced toward the battle. Krith Voss watched in shock as new, powerful human ships appeared where he thought there had only been rocks and dust. These were not the small, weak ships his scouts had reported seeing years before. These were true warships, built with new technology and designed for exactly this kind of fight. The battle turned even more chaotic as the hidden battleships joined the fight, firing powerful weapons into the remaining Skarn fleet. Explosions lit up the space around Earth like fireworks, though each one meant the death of soldiers on both sides. The Skarn commanders, seeing their fleet crumble faster than they expected, began calling for retreat. But Krith Voss refused to give the order. His pride would not let him accept defeat from a race he had called weak just days before. Admiral Cross made a final decision. She ordered her fleet to focus everything on the Iron Fang, Krith Voss's flagship. If they could destroy the enemy leader's ship, the rest of the Skarn fleet might finally retreat, ending the battle before more human lives were put at risk on the ground. Every remaining human warship turned its weapons toward the massive enemy flagship, firing everything they had. The Iron Fang shook under the combined assault, its shields flickering and failing under the pressure. Fire spread through its lower decks as human weapons found weak points in its armor. Krith Voss, watching his own ship begin to fail around him, finally understood the mistake he had made. He had underestimated a race that fought not with size or strength, but with intelligence, unity, and a will that refused to break. In the final moments before his flagship's core exploded, Krith Voss sent one last message to his remaining forces, ordering a full retreat. The surviving Skarn ships turned and fled back toward hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of dozens of destroyed warships floating silently in Earth's orbit. The Iron Fang, badly damaged but still holding together, limped away from the battlefield along with the rest of the retreating fleet. On Earth, the streets erupted with cheers and tears of relief. Humanity had survived its first true test against an alien empire. But Admiral Cross, standing quietly in the command center, did not celebrate like the others. She knew this was not the end. Krith Voss had escaped, and a race as proud as the Skarn would not forget this humiliation. They would return, stronger and angrier than before. She looked at the star map, now showing the retreating Skarn fleet disappearing into the darkness of space, and she spoke quietly to herself, remembering the words Sarah Chen had said to Krith Voss just days before. "You wanted war," she whispered. "Now you will see what humanity is truly capable of." Far across the galaxy, as Krith Voss's damaged flagship limped back toward Skarn territory, word of the defeat began to spread among the stars. Other alien races who had lived under fear of the Skarn dominion for centuries began to whisper about the small blue planet that had somehow fought off the mighty Skarn fleet. Some believed it was luck, others believed the reports were exaggerated, but a few, the wisest among them, understood that something had changed in the galaxy that day. A new power had entered the stage, one that the older empires did not yet understand. Humanity had shown that they would not bow to threats, and they would not go quietly into slavery. They had shown that they could think, adapt, and fight back with everything they had. This was only the beginning of a much longer story, one that would eventually reshape the balance of power across the entire galaxy. Back on Earth, as repairs began on the damaged parts of the planet's orbital defenses, Admiral Cross called an emergency meeting with the World Council. She stood before the leaders of humanity and delivered a message that would guide the next chapter of human history. "We won this battle," she said, "but we did not win the war. The Skarn Dominion will return, and next time, they will not underestimate us again. We must prepare. We must grow stronger. And if they come back looking for war, we must be ready to give them one they will never forget." The council listened in silence, understanding the weight of her words. Humanity had taken its first step into a much bigger, much more dangerous galaxy. The peaceful dream of quiet exploration and trade was gone, replaced by a new reality where survival meant strength, unity, and the willingness to do whatever it took to protect their home. As the sun set over Geneva that evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Admiral Cross stood alone on a balcony outside the command center, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Krith Voss was already planning his revenge. And somewhere out there, humanity's true test was only just beginning. 3 months passed after the battle above Earth, and the entire planet had changed. What was once a world divided by borders, languages, and old arguments had become something new. Every nation worked together now, sharing resources, sharing knowledge, and sharing one single goal. The Skarn Dominion had attacked Earth once, and everyone knew they would come back. Humanity would not be caught unprepared a second time. Admiral Elena Cross was no longer just the leader of Earth's small defense fleet. She had been given a new title, Supreme Commander of the United Earth Forces, a position created specifically to unite every human military force under one banner. She worked almost without sleep, moving between meetings with scientists, engineers, and world leaders. always pushing for faster progress, stronger ships, and better weapons. The first priority was learning everything possible about the Skarn Dominion. Human scientists studied the wreckage left behind from the battle, taking apart pieces of destroyed Skarn ships to understand their technology. They discovered that while Skarn ships were powerful, their designs were old and had not changed much in centuries. The Skarn Dominion had ruled for so long without real challenge that they had grown lazy in their innovation. This gave humanity an important advantage. Humans, being new to space warfare, had no old habits to unlearn. They could design completely new technology without being limited by old traditions. General Marcus Webb, a former engineer turned military leader, was placed in charge of Earth's weapons development program. He gathered the brightest minds from every country, from young university students to veteran scientists who had spent decades studying physics and engineering. Together, they worked on creating weapons and ships that would give humanity a real chance against future Skarn attacks. One of the biggest breakthroughs came from a young scientist named Dr. Amara Okafor. She had been studying alien energy shield technology captured from the battle wreckage, trying to understand how the Skarn protected their ships. During her research, she discovered a way to combine human energy systems with alien shield technology, creating something new and much more powerful than either race had built before. This new shield technology could absorb far more damage than anything humanity had used before, and it used less power to run, meaning ships could stay in battle longer without running out of energy. General Webb was amazed by her discovery and immediately ordered it to be added to every new ship being built. He also asked Dr. Okafor to lead a new research team focused entirely on combining human creativity with alien technology, believing this mixture could give humanity weapons far ahead of what the Skarn Dominion expected. While the scientists worked on new technology, Admiral Cross focused on rebuilding and expanding the Earth defense fleet. She knew that ships alone would not be enough. Humanity needed trained soldiers, skilled pilots, and smart commanders who could think quickly under pressure. She created a new training program called the Vanguard Initiative, designed to train the best possible fighters from every corner of the planet. Young men and women from every country applied to join the Vanguard Initiative, wanting to protect their home planet from another attack. Training was hard and dangerous, pushing recruits to their limits both physically and mentally. Many did not make it through the program, but those who did became some of the most skilled fighters in Earth's history. Among them was a young pilot named Jake Torres, who quickly became known for his quick thinking and natural skill in ship combat simulations. Jake had grown up in a small town, dreaming of flying since he was a child. When the Skarn attacked Earth, he had watched the battle from his backyard, terrified but also amazed by the bravery of the pilots fighting above him. That day, he decided he wanted to become one of those pilots himself, ready to protect his home the next time danger came from the stars. He joined the Vanguard Initiative as soon as he was old enough, training harder than almost anyone else in his group. As months passed, Earth's fleet grew larger and stronger. New shipyards were built in orbit around the planet, constructing warships faster than ever before using new technology. The old asteroid belt hiding spots were expanded into full military bases, giving humanity secret locations to build and repair ships away from the eyes of enemy scouts. The Stars was preparing not just to defend itself, but to eventually fight back against the Skarn Dominion on their own terms. Meanwhile, far away in Skarn territory, Krith Voss was dealing with his own problems. His defeat at Earth had damaged his reputation among the other Skarn warlords. Whispers spread through the Dominion that Krith Voss had grown weak, that his failure against a supposedly primitive race proved he was no longer fit to lead. Some warlords began plotting to remove him from power, wanting to take control of the Dominion for themselves. Krith Voss knew he needed a victory to prove his strength once again. He could not simply attack Earth again with the same tactics, knowing the humans would be prepared this time. Instead, he began gathering intelligence, sending spies disguised as traitors to gather information about human technology and military strength. He wanted to understand exactly what he was dealing with before launching a second attack. One of these spies, a Skarn agent posing as a neutral traitor named Vex, managed to make contact with corrupt officials on a human space station near Mars. Vex offered large amounts of valuable alien technology and resources in exchange for information about Earth's military plans. A small group of greedy officials, tempted by the offer, began secretly selling information about Earth's defenses to the Skarn spy, not fully understanding the danger they were putting their entire planet in. It took several months, but Earth's intelligence agencies eventually noticed unusual activity around the Mars station. A young intelligence officer named Captain Lisa Park was assigned to investigate the strange reports of missing supplies and unauthorized communications coming from the station. She worked carefully, gathering evidence bit by bit, until she finally uncovered the truth about the corrupt officials working with the Skarn spy. Captain Park reported her findings directly to Admiral Cross, who immediately ordered a full investigation and the arrest of everyone involved in the betrayal. The corrupt officials were captured, and the Skarn spy Vex was caught trying to escape the station. Under questioning, Vex revealed important information about Krith Voss's plans, confirming that the Skarn Dominion was indeed preparing for a second attack on Earth, this time with a much larger fleet. This discovery changed everything. Admiral Cross now knew that time was running out, and humanity needed to move from simply defending Earth to actively preparing for a much bigger war. She called an emergency meeting with the World Council and top military leaders, presenting a bold new plan. Instead of waiting for the Skarn to attack again, humanity would take the fight to them first, striking at smaller Skarn outposts to weaken their forces and gather more information about their true strength. This idea was risky and controversial. Some council members worried that attacking first would only anger the Skarn Dominion further, making the eventual war even worse. Others believed that waiting passively was even more dangerous, giving the Skarn time to prepare a massive attack that Earth might not survive. After long debates, the Council agreed to allow limited strikes against Skarn supply lines and smaller military outposts, hoping to slow down their preparations for the next invasion. Admiral Cross chose to lead the first mission herself, wanting to personally test humanity's new ships and technology in real combat before risking larger forces. She assembled a small strike team, including some of the best pilots from the Vanguard Initiative, among them the young pilot Jake Torres, who had graduated at the top of his training class. The target was a Skarn supply station, located near the edge of their territory, responsible for sending resources and reinforcements to the main Skarn fleet. It was lightly defended compared to major Skarn bases, making it a perfect test for humanity's new capabilities. The strike team traveled in newly built stealth ships, using technology developed by Dr. Okafor's research team to avoid detection during their approach. The mission began smoothly, with human ships slipping past Skarn patrol routes undetected. As they closed in on the supply station, Admiral Cross gave the order to attack. Human pilots, led by Jake Torres, moved in perfect coordination, striking key points on the station, designed to disable its defenses without causing unnecessary destruction. Cross wanted to prove a point, not just to the Skarn but to herself and her crew, that humanity could fight with precision and control, not just raw force. The battle was short but intense. Skarn defenders, caught completely off guard, struggled to organize a proper response against the fast and coordinated human attack. Jake Torres proved his skills, destroying 2 enemy fighters while protecting a damaged human ship from taking further hits. Within 20 minutes, the supply station's defenses were completely disabled, and Admiral Cross gave the order to extract valuable resources and information before the Skarn could send reinforcements. The mission was a complete success. Human forces retreated safely with valuable Skarn technology and important data about the location of other Skarn outposts in the region. Back on Earth, this small victory was celebrated as proof that humanity's new preparations were working. It gave people hope, showing that Earth was no longer simply reacting to Skarn attacks, but was becoming capable of striking back on its own terms. News of the attack reached Krith Voss quickly, filling him with rage. He had underestimated the humans once before, and now it seemed they were growing bolder, striking at Skarn territory itself. This attack, combined with his earlier defeat, made his position among the Skarn warlords even more dangerous. He needed to act quickly, both to protect his reputation and to finally crush the human threat before it grew any stronger. Krith Voss began gathering the largest fleet the Skarn Dominion had assembled in over a century, calling in warships from every corner of their territory. He knew that this next attack needed to be absolutely decisive. There could be no mistakes, no underestimating the enemy this time. He studied reports from his surviving officers about the tactics used during the first battle at Earth, trying to understand how the humans had managed to defeat his forces, despite being technologically inferior. Back on Earth, Admiral Cross and her team continued their preparations, knowing that a much larger Skarn attack was coming. Dr. Okafor's research team made further breakthroughs, developing even more powerful weapons using combined human and alien technology. General Webb oversaw the construction of new, larger warships, designed specifically to counter the massive Skarn battleships that scouts reported were being prepared. The Vanguard Initiative continued training new pilots and soldiers, preparing them for the larger battle ahead. Jake Torres, now recognized as one of Earth's most skilled young pilots, was promoted to lead his own squadron, tasked with training the next group of recruits joining Earth's growing military forces. As the months passed, tension grew across Earth. Everyone knew that another attack was coming, but nobody knew exactly when or how large it would be. Admiral Cross worked tirelessly, coordinating between military leaders, scientists, and world governments, trying to make sure humanity would be as prepared as possible when the Skarn Dominion finally returned. Then, one day, Earth's deep space sensors detected something massive approaching from the direction of Skarn territory. The reports were staggering, showing a fleet far larger than the one that had attacked Earth the first time. Krith Voss was coming back, and this time, he was bringing an army large enough to make sure there would be no mistakes, no tricks that could save humanity from complete destruction. Admiral Cross stood in the command center, looking at the incoming fleet on the star map, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. Humanity had spent months preparing, building new technology, training new soldiers, and growing stronger as a united planet. But even with everything they had accomplished, the fleet approaching Earth was larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever faced before. She turned to her officers, her voice steady despite the fear she felt inside. "This is it," she said. "Everything we've worked for, everything we've built, comes down to what happens next. The Skarn Dominion thinks they are bringing an army to crush a weaker enemy. They are about to learn that humanity does not simply survive threats. We rise to meet them, stronger than before." Across Earth, sirens began to sound, calling every soldier, pilot, and defender to their positions. The planet that had once been divided by countless borders and conflicts now stood united, ready to face the greatest challenge in human history. The final battle for humanity's survival was about to begin, and this time, Earth would not just be fighting to protect their home. They would be fighting to prove, once and for all, that humanity was a force the galaxy could not afford to underestimate. The Skarn fleet grew larger on Earth's sensors with every passing hour. Ship after ship appeared at the edge of the solar system, forming a wall of dark gray metal that stretched across the stars. Admiral Elena Cross watched the numbers climb on her screen, feeling her chest tighten with every new report. This was not the same fleet that had attacked Earth months before. This was an army built for total conquest, gathered from every corner of the Skarn Dominion. Krith Voss led this fleet personally, riding aboard a new flagship called the Dark Reckoning, built specifically to replace the Iron Fang that humans had destroyed in the first battle. This new ship was larger, stronger, and covered in thicker armor than anything the Skarn had used before. Krith Voss had learned from his mistakes, and he was determined not to repeat them. He would not underestimate the humans again, and he would not stop until Earth was completely under Skarn control. On Earth, every part of humanity's defense was put into action. Admiral Cross activated every ship, every station, and every soldier that had been trained and prepared over the past several months. The hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt released dozens of newly built warships, each one equipped with the combined human and alien technology developed by Dr. Amara Okafor's research team. These ships were faster, better shielded, and carried weapons that the Skarn had never seen before. General Marcus Webb coordinated the ground defenses, making sure that if any Skarn ships managed to break through the fleet and reach Earth's surface, humanity would be ready to fight back with everything available. Cities activated emergency shelters, and defense systems built into major buildings were switched on. ready to protect civilians from any attacks that made it through the space battle above. Jake Torres, now leading his own squadron of pilots, gathered his team for a final briefing before the battle began. His squadron included pilots from many different countries, all of them trained through the Vanguard initiative. They had trained together for months, learning to trust each other completely, knowing that in the coming battle, their lives would depend on working as one unit rather than as individual fighters. "This is what we trained for," Jake told his squadron, standing in front of his ship in the hangar bay. "They think we're going to run scared. They think Earth will surrender, because their fleet is bigger than ours. But we know something they don't understand yet. We're not fighting for power or conquest. We're fighting for our home, for our families, for everyone down there counting on us. That gives us something their fleet doesn't have." As the Skarn fleet moved closer to Earth's orbit, Admiral Cross activated the first phase of her battle plan. Unlike the first battle, where humanity relied heavily on hidden traps and surprise attacks, this time Earth needed a different strategy. The Skarn fleet was too large and too well prepared for simple tricks to work again. Instead, Cross planned to use humanity's new technology and superior tactics to fight a smarter, more controlled battle. The first wave of human ships moved out to meet the Skarn fleet at the edge of the solar system, rather than waiting for them near Earth. This surprised Krith Voss, who expected the humans to defend close to their home planet as they had before. Cross knew that fighting farther from Earth gave her forces more room to maneuver and reduced the risk of stray weapons fire hitting the planet itself. The battle began with human ships firing precise, coordinated strikes at the outer edges of the Skarn formation, targeting their support ships and supply vessels first. This tactic aimed to cut off the main battle fleet from reinforcements and repairs, weakening their ability to sustain a long fight. Dr. Okafor's new shield technology proved incredibly effective, allowing human ships to absorb hits that would have destroyed older vessels, giving pilots more time to outmaneuver their enemies. Krith Voss, watching the battle unfold from the Dark Reckoning, quickly realized that the humans were fighting differently than before. Instead of relying on tricks and surprises, they were using intelligent tactics, striking weak points and retreating before Skarn ships could respond effectively. He ordered his fleet to tighten their formation, protecting their supply lines while pushing forward with their main battle group toward Earth. Jake Torres led his squadron into the heart of the fighting, weaving between enemy fire with skill that seemed almost impossible for pilots who had only been training for less than a year. His squadron focused on disabling Skarn fighter wings, protecting the larger human warships from swarms of smaller enemy vessels trying to overwhelm them with numbers. Every pilot in his squadron fought with precision, remembering their training and trusting each other completely, withering the chaos of battle. As the battle raged on, both sides suffered heavy losses. Explosions filled the space between Earth and the edge of the solar system, each one representing the destruction of a ship and the loss of soldiers on both sides. Admiral Cross watched carefully from the command center, adjusting her strategy constantly based on how the battle unfolded, trying to find weaknesses in the massive Skarn formation. She noticed that despite their larger numbers, the Skarn fleet was still using old, predictable tactics, relying on their size and strength rather than clever strategy. This confirmed what human scientists had suspected after studying the wreckage from the first battle. The Skarn Dominion had grown too comfortable after centuries without real challenge, and they lacked the flexibility needed to adapt quickly during an unpredictable fight. Cross decided to use this weakness to her advantage. She ordered a group of fast, stealth-equipped ships to slip around the edges of the Skarn formation, avoiding direct confrontation, and instead targeting the fleet's central command ships. If they could disrupt Krith Voss's ability to coordinate his forces effectively, the massive Skarn fleet might begin to fall into confusion despite their numerical advantage. This new wave of stealth ships, using technology developed specifically for this kind of mission, managed to slip past Skarn patrols undetected. They struck at several key command vessels, disabling communication systems and causing chaos within different sections of the Skarn fleet. Without clear orders from their commanders, many Skarn ships began fighting independently, losing the coordinated strength that had made their fleet so dangerous at the start of the battle. Krith Voss became increasingly frustrated as reports of confusion spread through his fleet. He had expected an easy victory against a weaker enemy, but instead, He found himself fighting an opponent that adapted quickly and struck with precision, exactly where it hurt the most. He ordered the Dark Reckoning to move deeper into the battle, hoping his personal presence would help restore order among his confused forces. This decision proved to be exactly what Admiral Cross had been hoping for. With Krith Voss's flagship moving closer to the main battle, it became a clearer target for human forces. Cross ordered her remaining battleships, hidden in reserve near Earth's moon, to move into position for a coordinated strike on the Dark Reckoning, similar to the tactic that had worked against the Iron Fang in the first battle. Jake Torres and his squadron were given a critical mission during this phase of the attack. They needed to clear a path through the Skarn fighter screen protecting the Dark Reckoning, allowing human battleships to get close enough for a decisive strike. This was one of the most dangerous parts of the entire battle, requiring Jake's squadron to fly directly into the heart of enemy defenses. "This is it," Jake said over the squadron's communication channel, his voice steady despite the danger ahead. "Stay close, watch each other's backs, and remember why we're here. Let's clear this path." The squadron moved into formation, diving toward the Dark Reckoning's fighter screen with incredible speed and precision. What followed was one of the most intense dogfights of the entire battle, with human pilots using every bit of their training to outmaneuver and destroy enemy fighters, while avoiding the massive flagship's powerful defensive weapons. Explosions lit up the space around them, as both sides fought fiercely, neither willing to back down. Despite taking heavy losses, Jake's squadron managed to clear enough of a path for the human battleships to move into striking distance of the Dark Reckoning. Admiral Cross gave the final order, and every remaining human warship focused their combined firepower on Krith Voss's flagship, just as they had done with the Iron Fang months before. The Dark Reckoning's shields, though stronger than the Iron Fang's had been, began to buckle under the intense, coordinated assault. Krith Voss, watching his new flagship shake violently around him, felt a mixture of rage and disbelief. He had built this ship specifically to avoid the humiliation of his first defeat, yet here he was, facing the same fate all over again. Inside the Dark Reckoning, chaos spread through the ship as fires broke out, and sections began losing power. Krith Voss's officers begged him to retreat, warning that the ship would not survive much longer under the relentless human attack. For a moment, Krith Voss considered fighting until the very end, refusing to accept another defeat. But something in him, perhaps a small piece of wisdom gained from his previous mistake, told him that dying here would accomplish nothing except giving the humans an even greater victory. With deep reluctance and burning anger, Krith Voss finally gave the order to retreat. The remaining Skarn fleet, already in disarray from the loss of coordinated command, began pulling back from the battle, fleeing toward the safety of hyperspace. Human forces continued striking at the retreating ships, weakening the Skarn fleet even further, before they finally escaped Earth's solar system entirely. As the last Skarn ships disappeared into hyperspace, cheers erupted across human ships and throughout Earth itself. For the second time, humanity had faced overwhelming odds and had come out victorious. But this victory had come at a terrible cost. Many human ships had been destroyed, and countless soldiers, including several pilots from Jake Torres's own squadron, had given their lives defending their home planet. Admiral Cross stood quietly in the command center after the battle ended, looking at the list of casualties that scrolled across her screen. Despite the victory, there was little room for celebration in her heart. Too many good people had died protecting Earth, and she knew that the Skarn Dominion would not simply give up after 2 defeats. If anything, this loss would make Krith Voss and the rest of the Skarn leadership even more desperate and dangerous. Jake Torres returned to Earth with his squadron, now reduced to less than half its original size. He visited the families of the pilots who had not survived, struggling to find words that could ease their pain even slightly. He carried the weight of their loss with him, promising himself that he would honor their sacrifice by continuing to fight for humanity's survival, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Back in Skarn territory, Krith Voss faced the consequences of his second defeat. The other Skarn warlords, already suspicious of his leadership after the first battle, now openly challenged his authority. Some called for his removal, believing that his obsession with defeating Earth had cost the Dominion too many ships and too many lives for no real gain. Krith Voss found himself fighting not only against humanity, but now against threats from within his own empire. Desperate to save his position and prove his strength once and for all, Krith Voss made a dangerous decision. He would gather every remaining resource the Skarn Dominion could offer, calling in favors from allied races, and even risking conflict with neutral territories, to build the largest fleet ever assembled. This time, there would be no room for failure. He would either destroy humanity completely, or he would lose everything trying. On Earth, Admiral Cross received intelligence reports about Krith Voss's growing desperation and the massive fleet he was assembling for a final attack. She understood that the next battle would likely be the most important one in human history, a fight that would determine whether humanity survived as a free people or fell under Skarn control forever. She called together her top officers, including General Webb, Dr. Okafor, and the surviving leaders of the Vanguard Initiative, including Jake Torres. Standing before them, she laid out the difficult truth of their situation. Krith Voss will not stop, she said. He has lost too much to simply walk away now. The next attack will be the largest and most dangerous we have ever faced. We need to use everything we have learned, everything we have built, and prepare for a battle unlike anything humanity has ever fought before. She paused, looking around the room at the tired but determined faces of the people who had helped guide humanity through its darkest moments so far. But I believe in this fleet, she continued. I believe in the soldiers who have given everything to protect our home. And I believe that when Krith Voss brings his final fleet to Earth, he will finally understand what it truly means to face humanity's full strength. The room fell silent, each person understanding the weight of what was coming. Humanity had survived 2 attacks, growing stronger and smarter with each battle. But the next fight would test everything they had built, pushing human courage and ingenuity to their absolute limits. The final battle for humanity's future was approaching, and everyone knew that this time, there would be no room for anything less than complete victory. 6 months passed after the second battle above Earth, and humanity used every single day to prepare for what everyone believed was coming. Admiral Elena Cross no longer believed that simply defending Earth would be enough to guarantee humanity's survival. Krith Voss had proven twice that he would not stop attacking, no matter the cost. If humanity wanted true peace, they would need to end this threat permanently, not just survive another battle. Cross brought a bold and dangerous plan to the World Council. Instead of waiting for the Skarn Dominion to launch their next massive attack, humanity would strike first, taking the fight directly to Skarn territory. The goal would not simply be to weaken their fleet, but to remove Krith Voss from power entirely and force the Skarn Dominion into a lasting peace agreement. This meant humanity needed to be ready to fight, not just defensively, but as an invading force capable of striking deep into enemy territory. The Council debated this plan for weeks. Many worried that attacking the Skarn Dominion directly would be seen as an act of pure aggression, turning humanity into the very thing they were fighting against. Others argued that with Krith Voss growing more desperate and dangerous with each defeat, waiting for him to attack again might mean facing an even larger and more destructive assault than before. After long discussions, the Council finally approved Cross's plan, but with strict conditions. Human forces would target only military installations, avoiding civilian populations whenever possible, and the ultimate goal would be to force a peace agreement, not to conquer or destroy the Skarn people entirely. With approval secured, Admiral Cross began assembling what would become known as the Vanguard Fleet, humanity's first true invasion force built specifically for offensive operations deep in enemy territory. General Marcus Webb oversaw the construction of new, larger warships designed for long-range missions, while Dr. Amara Okafor's research team continued improving weapons and shield technology, pushing human engineering further than ever before. Jake Torres, now a respected squadron leader with real combat experience from 2 major battles, was promoted to wing commander, given responsibility over several fighter squadrons that would be part of the invasion force. He spent months training new pilots, sharing lessons learned from previous battles, preparing them for the dangerous mission that lay ahead. The losses from the second battle still weighed heavily on him, and he was determined to make sure his new pilots were as prepared as possible for what they would face. Meanwhile, in Skarn territory, Krith Voss faced growing pressure from every direction. His failed attacks on Earth had cost the Dominion enormous resources and countless lives, weakening their overall military strength. Several smaller races that had once feared the Skarn Dominion began testing their independence, seeing weakness in an empire that had once seemed unbeatable. Rival Skarn warlords openly plotted against Krith Voss, waiting for the right moment to remove him from power and take control of the Dominion for themselves. Desperate to secure his position, Krith Voss made a decision that would prove to be his greatest mistake yet. He began recalling defense fleets from smaller Skarn colonies and outposts across the Dominion, gathering every available ship for one final, massive assault on Earth. He believed that with enough overwhelming force, he could finally crush humanity once and for all, silencing his critics and proving his strength to the entire Dominion. This decision left many Skarn territories dangerously undefended, a fact that Earth's intelligence network, now much more sophisticated after months of careful work, quickly discovered. Captain Lisa Park, who had uncovered the spy network months earlier, now led a team dedicated to gathering intelligence on Skarn military movements. Her reports revealed that Krith Voss's homeworld itself, along with several key military production centers, had been left with minimal defenses while he prepared his final attack fleet. Admiral Cross saw this as the opportunity humanity needed. Rather than waiting for Krith Voss to launch his attack on Earth, she proposed striking directly at the heart of Skarn territory while their homeworld defenses were weak. If humanity could damage the Skarn Dominion's core military production capabilities and demonstrate their ability to strike anywhere in Skarn space, it might force the Dominion's leadership to finally consider peace, regardless of what Krith Voss wanted. This was an incredibly risky plan. It meant sending humanity's newly built Vanguard fleet on a long journey deep into unknown enemy territory, far from the safety and support of Earth. If something went wrong, if the fleet was discovered too early, or faced unexpected resistance, humanity could lose a massive portion of their military strength in enemy space, leaving Earth completely vulnerable to any remaining Skarn forces. After careful consideration and long debates with military leaders and the World Council, the decision was made to proceed with the mission. Admiral Cross would personally lead the Vanguard fleet on this dangerous journey into Skarn territory, while General Webb remained on Earth to coordinate the planet's defenses in case something went wrong during the invasion. The Vanguard fleet departed Earth under complete secrecy, using advanced stealth technology developed by Dr. Okafor's team to avoid detection during their long journey through space. Jake Torres led his fighter squadrons as part of the invasion force, knowing that this mission would likely be the most dangerous and important of his entire career. The journey took several weeks, with every soldier and pilot growing more tense with each passing day as they moved deeper into unknown, hostile territory. Finally, the Vanguard fleet arrived at the outer edges of Skarn territory, near a heavily fortified planet known as Cathara Prime, home to one of the Dominion's largest military shipyards. This was the first major target of humanity's invasion, a critical production center responsible for building a significant portion of the Skarn Dominion's warships. If humanity could destroy this facility, it would severely damage the Dominion's ability to rebuild their military strength for years to come. The battle for Cathara Prime began with a surprise attack, human stealth ships slipping past outer patrols before revealing themselves in a sudden, coordinated strike against the shipyard's defenses. The Skarn forces stationed there, weakened by Krith Voss's earlier decision to recall defense fleets, struggled to mount an effective resistance against the well-prepared human invasion force. Jake Torres led his squadrons in a daring assault against the shipyard's fighter defenses, clearing a path for human bombers to strike at the massive construction facilities below. The battle was intense, with Skarn defenders fighting desperately despite being outmatched, refusing to simply surrender their homeland without a fight. Explosions rocked the shipyard as human forces methodically destroyed key production facilities, careful to avoid unnecessary harm to the Skarn civilians living in nearby settlements. Within hours, the battle for Cathara Prime was won. The shipyard, once one of the Dominion's most important military assets, lay in ruins, its ability to produce new warships destroyed for the foreseeable future. Admiral Cross ordered her fleet to maintain a defensive position around the planet, while human engineers gathered valuable intelligence and resources from the wreckage, before finally withdrawing to continue their advance deeper into Skarn territory. News of the attack on Cathara Prime spread quickly through the Skarn Dominion, causing panic and confusion among the other warlords. For the first time in the Dominion's long history, an enemy fleet had struck directly at their core territory, destroying one of their most important military assets. This event shattered the illusion of Skarn invincibility that had protected their empire for centuries, sending shockwaves through every corner of their territory. Krith Voss, still preparing his massive fleet for the planned attack on Earth, received news of the assault on Cathara Prime with disbelief and fury. He had never imagined that the humans would dare to strike directly into Skarn territory, believing they would remain purely defensive, too afraid to risk everything on an offensive mission. This attack proved that he had once again underestimated humanity's willingness to fight, and now he faced a critical decision. Should he continue his planned attack on Earth, or turn his fleet around to defend Skarn territory from further human incursions? While Krith Voss struggled with this decision, Admiral Cross continued pushing the Vanguard fleet deeper into Skarn space, targeting additional military installations and production centers. Each successful strike further weakened the Dominion's ability to sustain a prolonged war, while also sending a clear message to every race under Skarn control that the Dominion was no longer as powerful or untouchable as it once seemed. Other Skarn warlords, seeing their empire crumbling under humanity's relentless counterattack, began to turn against Krith Voss completely, blaming his obsession with Earth for the current crisis facing their entire civilization. A powerful warlord named Zareth Kol, who had long desired greater power within the Dominion, saw this chaos as an opportunity to seize control. He began rallying support from other warlords, promising to remove Krith Voss and negotiate peace with the humans before the Dominion suffered even greater losses. As internal conflict grew within the Skarn Dominion, Admiral Cross made a crucial decision. Rather than continuing to strike randomly at various targets, she decided to focus the Vanguard fleet's remaining strength on one final, decisive target: Krith Voss's personal fleet, still gathering for its planned assault on Earth. If humanity could destroy or scatter this final invasion force before it ever reached Earth, it would remove the greatest remaining threat to humanity's safety, while also further weakening Krith Voss's already crumbling position within the Dominion. Using intelligence gathered from captured Skarn officers and data recovered during previous battles, Cross's fleet tracked down the location where Krith Voss was assembling his massive attack force. The Vanguard fleet, though smaller than the enormous army Krith Voss had gathered, had the advantage of surprise, superior tactics, and technology that had proven effective in every battle fought so far. The final battle began with human stealth ships infiltrating the outer edges of Krith Voss's fleet, gathering crucial information about ship positions and weaknesses before the main attack began. Jake Torres led the first wave of fighters, striking quickly and precisely at key targets before retreating to allow the larger human warships to move into position for a coordinated assault. Krith Voss, caught completely off guard by this unexpected attack, deep within what he believed was safe Skarn territory, scrambled to organize his forces for an effective defense. But the damage from months of internal conflict, resource shortages, and declining morale among his soldiers made it difficult to mount the same level of coordinated resistance his forces had shown in previous battles. The battle raged fiercely, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Admiral Cross, watching the fight unfold from her flagship, made careful, calculated decisions, using every lesson learned from the previous two battles fought above Earth. She focused her forces on breaking apart Krith Voss's fleet formation, preventing him from using his numerical advantage effectively, just as she had done during the second battle at Earth. As the battle reached its climax, Admiral Cross received unexpected communication from Zareth Kol, the rival Skarn warlord who had been building support to remove Krith Voss from power. Kol proposed an alliance, offering to withdraw his own forces from supporting Krith Voss, in exchange for a promise that humanity would negotiate peace with the Dominion once Krith Voss was defeated, rather than continuing to attack Skarn territory indiscriminately. Admiral Cross agreed to this proposal, understanding that ending the immediate threat from Krith Voss, while opening a path toward lasting peace, was worth more than simply achieving total military victory. With Zareth Kol's forces withdrawing from the battle, Krith Voss's fleet became increasingly isolated and vulnerable, losing crucial support that he had been counting on to secure victory. Sensing the battle turning decisively against him, and understanding that defeat here would mean certain removal from power, possibly even death at the hands of his rivals, Krith Voss made one final, desperate decision. Rather than retreating and facing the humiliation and consequences of yet another failure, he ordered his flagship to make a direct, all-or-nothing assault on Admiral Cross's command ship, hoping that killing Earth's most important military leader might still turn the tide of the battle in his favor. This reckless charge left Krith Voss's flagship dangerously exposed, moving ahead of the protective formation of remaining Skarn ships. Admiral Cross, recognizing this desperate gamble for what it was, ordered every available human warship to focus their combined firepower on the approaching enemy flagship, refusing to give Krith Voss any chance to succeed in his final, desperate attempt. The concentrated assault overwhelmed the Dark Reckoning's defenses within minutes. Fire and explosions tore through the ship as its shields finally failed completely under the relentless human attack. Krith Voss, watching his flagship crumble around him for the second time, understood in his final moments that his obsession with conquering Earth had ultimately led to his own destruction, both militarily and politically within his own empire. The Dark Reckoning exploded in a final massive burst of light, ending the life of the warlord who had started this devastating conflict by underestimating a race he had believed to be weak and insignificant. With their leader gone and their fleet shattered, the remaining Skarn forces quickly surrendered, understanding that continuing to fight without leadership or support would only lead to further pointless destruction. News of Krith Voss's death spread rapidly throughout the Skarn Dominion, bringing an end to the immediate military threat against Earth. Zareth Kol, now the most powerful remaining Skarn warlord, moved quickly to consolidate control over the Dominion's shattered leadership structure, remembering his promise to Admiral Cross about pursuing peace with humanity. Admiral Cross, standing aboard her flagship amid the wreckage of the final battle, felt a complex mixture of relief, exhaustion, and sorrow for everything humanity had sacrificed to reach this moment. The war that had begun with Krith Voss's arrogant demand for Earth's surrender was finally coming to an end, but the cost had been enormous, measured in the lives of countless brave soldiers, pilots, and civilians who had given everything to protect their home. She looked out at the wreckage of the Skarn fleet floating silently in space, remembering the words Sarah Chen had spoken to Krith Voss so long ago, back when this entire conflict had first begun. Humanity had indeed shown the galaxy exactly what they were capable of when threatened. They had turned the arrogance and aggression of a supposedly superior empire into ashes, proving that strength was not simply about size or technology, but about unity, determination, and the refusal to accept defeat when everything that mattered was at stake. As the Vanguard fleet began its long journey back toward Earth, carrying news of victory and the beginning of what could become a lasting peace, Admiral Cross knew that humanity's place in the galaxy had changed forever. No longer would they be seen as a weak, primitive race to be conquered and enslaved. Humanity had earned its place among the stars through blood, sacrifice, and unbreakable will, and the entire galaxy would remember the price the Skarn Dominion paid for underestimating them. The Vanguard fleet returned to Earth to a welcome unlike anything the planet had ever seen. Millions of people gathered in cities across the world, watching massive screens showing the fleet's arrival in Earth's orbit. Admiral Elena Cross stepped off her flagship to cheers and tears from crowds who had waited months, not knowing if their loved ones fighting in deep space would ever return home. The war that had begun with a threat from an arrogant warlord was finally over, and humanity had not just survived, but had proven itself as a power the galaxy could no longer ignore. In the weeks following the final battle, Zareth Kol, now the leading voice among the Skarn Dominion's remaining warlords, sent official representatives to Earth to begin peace negotiations. This was a moment nobody could have imagined just 1 year earlier, when Krith Voss had first threatened Earth with complete destruction. Now, the very empire that had tried to conquer humanity was sending diplomats, hoping to establish a peaceful relationship with the race that had defeated their strongest warlord not once, but twice. Admiral Cross, along with Sarah Chen, the diplomat who had first faced Krith Voss's arrogance months before the war began, led Earth's negotiation team. The talks were difficult and filled with tension, as both sides carried the weight of everything that had happened during the conflict. However, Both Cross and Chen understood that true strength was not about continuing to fight when peace was possible. It was about knowing when to extend a hand, even to a former enemy, if doing so could prevent further unnecessary suffering. After weeks of careful negotiation, a historic peace treaty was signed between Earth and the Skarn Dominion. The treaty established clear boundaries between human and Skarn territory, guaranteed the safety and independence of smaller races that had lived under Skarn control, and opened the door for careful, limited trade and cultural exchange between the two civilizations. It was not a perfect peace, and deep distrust remained on both sides, but it marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where humanity was recognized as an equal power rather than a weak target to be conquered. News of humanity's victory over the Skarn Dominion spread quickly across the galaxy, reaching civilizations that had never even heard of Earth before the conflict began. Smaller races that had lived in fear of Skarn expansion for centuries began reaching out to humanity, curious about this new race that had somehow defeated one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. Earth, once an unknown planet on the edge of known space, suddenly found itself becoming an important player in galactic politics. Jake Torres, having survived 3 major battles and lost many friends along the way, found himself struggling to adjust to life after the war. He continued serving in Earth's military, now helping train new generations of pilots using lessons learned from the actual battles he had fought. He often visited the families of pilots who had not survived, keeping his promise to honor their sacrifice by ensuring their stories were never forgotten. Over time, he began to find peace, understanding that while the cost of the war had been terrible, the freedom and safety it secured for humanity's future made that sacrifice meaningful. Dr. Amara Okafor continued her groundbreaking research, now working on projects focused on rebuilding and healing rather than weapons of war. Her work combining human and alien technology had not only helped Earth survive the conflict, but had also opened new possibilities for medicine, energy production, and space travel. She became one of the leading voices in a new field of science, focused on peaceful cooperation between different species, believing that the same creativity used to build powerful weapons could also be used to build a better future for everyone. General Marcus Webb oversaw the difficult process of rebuilding everything the war had damaged, both the physical infrastructure destroyed during the battles and the emotional wounds left in countless families who had lost loved ones. He worked closely with world leaders to ensure that the unity humanity had found during the crisis would not simply fade away now that the immediate danger had passed. He believed strongly that the lessons learned from working together, setting aside old rivalries for a common goal, needed to continue shaping how humanity approached challenges in the future. Captain Lisa Park, whose intelligence work had proven crucial throughout the entire conflict, was promoted to lead a new division focused on maintaining peaceful relationships with other alien races, while also staying alert to any future threats that might emerge from unexpected directions. She often reflected on how a single act of betrayal from corrupt officials had almost cost humanity everything, and she dedicated herself to ensuring that Earth would never again be caught unprepared by hidden dangers, whether from outside threats or internal weaknesses. Admiral Elena Cross, now recognized as one of the most important figures in human history, continued leading Earth's military forces, though her focus shifted increasingly toward maintaining peace rather than preparing for war. She often thought back to the moment when Sarah Chen had first stood before Krith Voss, refusing to back down despite facing an enemy who seemed impossibly powerful. That single moment of courage had set humanity on a path that led through terrible sacrifice, but ultimately, to a future where Earth stood strong and free among the stars. 1 year after the peace treaty was signed, Admiral Cross was invited to speak before a newly formed council made up of representatives from several races across the galaxy, including smaller civilizations that had once lived under Skarn control, but now enjoyed greater independence following the war's end. Standing before this diverse gathering of alien leaders, she reflected on everything humanity had experienced since first encountering the Skarn Dominion. When Krith Voss first threatened our world, she began, her voice carrying across the large gathering hall, he believed humanity was weak, primitive, unworthy of respect, or equal treatment among the stars. He believed that because we were new to space travel, because our ships were smaller and our technology less advanced, We would simply bow to his demands out of fear. She paused, looking around at the many different faces watching her, beings from dozens of different worlds, each with their own unique history and struggles. He was wrong, she continued. Humanity did not survive because we were the strongest, or because we had the best technology. We survived because we refused to give up, because we worked together despite our differences, and because we understood that true strength comes not from conquering others, but from protecting what we love and standing firm against those who would take it from us. Her words resonated deeply with the gathered representatives, many of whom had faced similar struggles against powerful empires throughout their own histories. In the months that followed, Earth became an important symbol across the galaxy, proof that even a young, seemingly weak civilization could stand against overwhelming odds and emerge not just victorious, but stronger and wiser for having faced such a difficult trial. Back on Earth, life slowly returned to a new kind of normal. Cities that had been damaged during the conflict were rebuilt, often incorporating new technology developed during the war to create stronger, more advanced infrastructure than before. The unity that humanity had discovered during their darkest moments remained a powerful force, guiding how nations worked together on new challenges, from continued space exploration to solving problems that had once seemed impossible to overcome. Jake Torres eventually retired from active combat duty, though he continued working with the Vanguard Initiative, now transformed into a program focused on training explorers and diplomats as much as soldiers, reflecting humanity's new role in the galaxy as both protectors and partners for other races. He often told his students that the greatest lesson from the war was not about winning battles, but about understanding that true courage meant standing up for what was right, even when facing seemingly impossible odds. Sarah Chen continued her work as a diplomat, now traveling to many different worlds, helping establish peaceful relationships between Earth and various alien civilizations. She often thought about that fateful meeting with Krith Voss, remembering how close humanity had come to either surrendering everything or being completely destroyed. She was grateful that the difficult choice she made that day, standing firm rather than backing down out of fear, had ultimately led to a future where humanity could build genuine friendships across the stars, rather than living in constant fear of conquest. Even Zareth Cole, now leading a transformed Skarn Dominion that had moved away from the aggressive expansion policies of previous leaders, found himself surprised by how the relationship between his people and humanity evolved over time. What had begun as bitter enemies gradually became cautious allies, working together on projects that benefited both civilizations, proving that even the deepest conflicts could eventually give way to understanding and cooperation when both sides were willing to learn from their mistakes. Years later, when new generations of humans looked back at this period in their history, they would remember it not simply as a story of war and destruction, but as the moment when humanity truly came into its own as a spacefaring civilization. The war with the Skarn Dominion had tested everything humanity valued: their courage, their creativity, their willingness to work together despite differences, and their refusal to accept a future defined by fear and submission. Admiral Elena Cross, in her later years, often spoke to young cadets joining Earth's military forces, sharing the lessons she had learned throughout the entire conflict. She reminded them that humanity's victory had never truly been about defeating an enemy through superior force alone. It had been about proving that a united, determined people could overcome even the greatest challenges, not through cruelty or endless aggression, but through intelligence, courage, and an unbreakable commitment to protecting what mattered most. The stars that had once seemed so threatening, filled with the danger of powerful empires like the Skarn Dominion, now represented endless possibilities for humanity's future. Earth had earned its place among the galaxy's civilizations, not through conquest, but through resilience and the courage to stand firm when everything seemed impossible to overcome. And so, the story that began with a single, defiant sentence spoken by a brave diplomat facing an arrogant warlord became one of the most important chapters in human history. Krith Voss had wanted war, believing humanity too weak to resist his demands. Instead, he found a civilization that would rise to meet any challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed, proving to the entire galaxy that humanity's strength came not from the size of their fleet or the power of their weapons, but from the unbreakable spirit that lived within every person willing to stand and fight for the future they believed in. Humanity had turned the ashes of war into the foundation for a new age of exploration, cooperation, and hope among the stars, forever remembered as the moment when a young and determined civilization proved that even the smallest flame of courage could light the way through the darkest of times.